Well, hello, I'm James. And once again, it's time for us to be together whenever together is. Whether you watch this live or whether you watch this later on. Whenever you watch this, uh, it's good to be with you. I want to remind you as we come together in this moment that you are infinitely precious. You are unconditionally loved for the gift you already are. You are unique. And I sat about thinking about that this morning because I've been thinking about the idea of what it means for there to be anything that is generic, that is uniform, nameless, pointless. And sometimes I think that labeling is a way that we make something that was not generic. We imagine we can make something or someone generic. I'll tell you why I was thinking about it a little bit, because I happen to be a pastor. That's a title that might be attached to me. Some people might say preacher. Some people might say priest, father, reverend, any of those titles that point to me. And yet, even as I think about the term pastor, no two pastors I've ever met, none of my sibling colleagues in any denomination, or including my own, United Methodism, are generic. The way that I am pastor is different than anyone else. Now, there are some forms, perhaps some attire, some order that we tend to follow. But in the end, the way I express being pastor is different than anyone else's. In the same way that whatever you are, whatever you do, whatever label might be attached to you, I've never known two teachers to be the same, for instance. When I think about teachers, I don't think in the generic. I have a cadre of teachers that I remember so well in my life who brought an individuality to the classroom. I remember them for the way they encouraged me to learn, for the way or discouraged me. I suppose there were a few of those, but for the most part, the way they encouraged me to learn was unique and different to each one. And the personality of each teacher drew out different students in the classroom. And it's because there is no such thing as a generic teacher, a generic pastor, a generic sanitation engineer, a generic police person, firefighter. There is no such thing as a generic person who is homeless, or a generic immigrant. We are all unique. We all bear something unique, an aspect of the divine that cannot be reflected by anybody else. And so we need to do the best we can. We are invited to do the best we can to not identify as some kind of generic label anybody else might put on us. With whatever adjective they are. For instance, a good student, a poor student, an average student, mediocre student. Who cares? Who cares? Those are all labels that cannot define you. We spend a lot of time labeling things because then we can kind of make generalizations that aren't true for every single one of the instances. Paul is very clear when he talks about all of us as parts of the body, that one is an eye, one is an ear, one is a foot. And every single one of us matters. Without the feet, we don't go anywhere. Without the eyes, we might not see anything. Without the ears, we don't hear. Without the mouthpiece, I couldn't be speaking to you right now. All of those pieces are unique. And because they're unique, and expressed uniquely by each individual expressing that uniqueness, the the combination of all of those unique moments, all of those unique pieces makes the whole. So why did I spend any time talking about this today? It's because I keep running into folks who feel like they are in some way generic. Sometimes I talk about myself as if I'm generic. It irritates the living stuffings out of my son Joshua, especially sometimes, when I just call myself, I'm a white guy. And immediately there are all sorts of things associated with that. Privilege. Yeah, I've had a lot of privilege, a lot of implied passive privileges pass my way just because of the color of my skin and because I happen to be male. And fully identify. The fact that any one of those little pieces, though, don't necessarily, you can't tell by looking at one white person what they're like, or one black person what they're like, or one brown person what they're like, or one yellow person what they're like. And none of those colors are even accurate anyway. I always grew up singing that wonderful song, Red, Yellow, Black, and White. Got expanded to red, yellow, brown, black, and white. We are precious in God's sight, and we are precious and unique. We bring to bear in this world something no one else before or after will ever bring to bear. And as parts of this whole, as parts of this, this body living in the world, we get to reflect in our own unique way what it means to be who we are. We don't have to identify or allow ourselves to be identified by any titles. That doesn't mean somebody might not call me Pastor James and mean something by it. In particular, oftentimes, if it's someone who has a relationship with me, who has a connection with me, I have been pastoral to them in a very unique way. So that Pastor James is different than Pastor Bob, Pastor Mary, Pastor Michelle, Pastor whoever, because of their particular experience. However, I also have been in places where once they found out I was a pastor, they would refer to me as pastor or speak to me by my, Pastor James. And what they really were saying was, they had a collection of ideas about what I am, who I am as pastor, and they were putting them on me. We do the same thing to God, if we're being quite frank. That word God is loaded. You mean it in one way when you say the word God. I mean it in another way, most likely. The way that we know God is unique to each one of us. There isn't a generic way to know the infinite, the divine. There is no generic way. We each engage in this mystery, the infinite knowability of God in different ways, and experience it differently. We each build different walls to protect us. We each hide behind different walls. In many ways, sometimes a label can make it simpler in life, even for us. That way, I just go through the motions of being whatever my label is. Or people treat me just as the label that I am, because then they can dismiss me. What does a pastor know about that? What is, that kind of thing. So when you think about how wonderfully and awesomely you are made, the uniqueness of you, you are not generic, not even a generic human being. You are a unique being in this universe, a spiritual being having a human experience. And you get to live in this world and bring the gift of you to light so that others might experience that aspect of the infinite. Never forget how precious you are, how loved you already are just because you're you. And don't let anyone label you. Nothing less than love itself can name you. You are loved. So remember, You are infinitely precious and unconditionally loved for the gift you already are. And remember to express your uniqueness in the way that you live and are. Until the next time I see you, I wish you all the very best.